Hi everyone, and welcome to Lunch Hour Lessons with Allison. I'm Allison Mädl, and today is January 2nd, 2019. Every Wednesday at 12:30, I come to you live to introduce a subject related to nutrition and health that I think is interesting and bring you a topic that you can take with you into your daily life. If you have questions or like what you hear during the show, you can comment or like my page. Right after the broadcast, I'll be posting a transcript of this lesson on my blog at allisonmadel.com. So Happy New Year! Today's topic is heartburn, antacids, and your digestion, part 1. So thanks for being part of my lunch hour lessons that started back in November. I really hope that you've gained some valuable information so far throughout the past few weeks, and you've passed the information on to others, and you're ready to continue learning in 2019. That's really my hope for these, is that we spread the word and start to build these small nutritional and lifestyle concepts that really can influence our daily life to a huge degree. So my New Year's resolution is to bring you a valuable and engaging lunch hour lesson every week this year. I'm really passionate about growing what I talked about earlier. So today's lesson is the first in a 3-part series about our stomachs. And how many people do you know that have struggled with heartburn, GERD, or general stomach troubles? It's actually very common. And in today's part 1, we'll discuss the common approach to these conditions and the dangers inherent in some of the treatments. Next week, part 2 will cover how the stomach and digestion are supposed to work and how it can go wrong. And in part 3, I'll give some practical solutions to optimize the acidity of the stomach and ensure maximum nutrient absorption. So, during the holidays, taking antacids and acid blockers can be pretty commonplace because we're eating maybe too much food or foods that don't agree with us. And there's 2 types of drug products that are often used to alleviate some of the symptoms. The first are antacids, which are products like Tums and Alka-Seltzer, which effectively neutralize the acidic nature of the stomach. So if there's high acid suspected in the stomach, then these would neutralize that acid. They have a very alkaline formula, so that's how they work. Then there's kind of a step up from that, which would be the acid blockers called proton pump inhibitors. And proton pump inhibitors are also known as PPIs. And these drugs, what they do is they irreversibly bind to the parts of the stomach that produce the stomach acid and deactivate those parts. So there's no more stomach acid being produced. And some common brand names would be Prilosec, Prevacid, or Nexium, just so you're familiar with what I'm talking about. So both antacids like Tums and Alka-Seltzer and the PPIs include warning labels. They all do, and they say that they shouldn't be used long-term due to the known risks of certain concepts. The 3 that are the big ones are bone fracture, nutritional deficiencies, and overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. Pathogenic are the bad bacteria. But these negative consequences are really not publicized, and it's unfortunate because people really do find, well, it's not unfortunate that they find relief from their symptoms, but because they find relief and because the negative consequences really aren't publicized, people can continue to take these over-the-counter or prescription medications for years, sometimes even decades. And many people get sicker and sicker and don't recognize that there could be a link between what they're taking and their symptoms. So I'd like to take a moment now this first week to publicize the negative consequences of these acid blockers and antacids. So bone fracture, let's take that first. So calcium is a major constituent of our bones, and most people don't know that it needs a very high acid environment in order to be broken down and then absorbed and used to strengthen our bones. There was a 2006 study by the University of Pennsylvania that found that 44% of people who were on proton pump inhibitors, the PPIs, for more than a year had that 44% increased risk of hip fractures for people who were on PPIs for more than a year. So less acid in their stomach from those PPIs meant less bone building calcium and actually had a very negative effect. Okay, let's talk about nutritional deficiencies. So a high acid environment in the stomach can cleave or break apart proteins into their smallest building blocks, which are called amino acids, so that they can be digested. So protein is specifically digested first in the stomach. Fats and carbohydrates are digested a little further on in digestion. We'll talk about that next week when we really delve into the subject of digestion. But a high acidic environment also in the stomach triggers the rest of the digestive cascade for all the food that we eat. So our nutrient status is really only as good as the amount that we can digest. So we can put the healthiest foods into our mouths, but if we're not digesting them, then the food's basically worthless. So less acid means worse digestion in general. And again, we'll go into a lot more on that topic next week. Okay, the last one that the warning labels talk about is pathogenic bacteria, or the bad bacteria that can kind of overgrow in the stomach. So a high acid environment in the stomach is really one of our greatest barriers to unwanted bacteria coming in from the outside world and making us sick. It can come in on food, even inhaling things in the air. So people with lower stomach acid would have had a much higher risk of being susceptible to the recent E. coli outbreak on the romaine lettuce that we had in early December. So lowering stomach acid lowers the protective barrier of these E. coli's and all the other bad bugs that we don't want coming in. That's kind of why it's there. It really does protect us from those pathogens. But if people have GERD or heartburn, what else can they do but take the drugs? I mean, the commercials make it seem that the acid is total enemy and it's the main culprit and something that should be eradicated at all costs because they say it causes ulcers and all this kind of thing. So tune in next week for part 2 to find out why the stomach acid is actually so important to the overall health, even to the point of sometimes benefiting those with heartburn once the stomach can heal. So that's all the time we have for today. Be sure to tell a friend this week's lunch hour lesson, which is antacids and acid blockers have serious drawbacks and should never be used long term. That is, antacids and acid blockers have serious drawbacks and should never be used long term. Like my page to get the weekend tip that comes with this lesson. It comes out on Saturday morning, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.